never thought I'd see the day when my own daughter would tell me I wasn't welcome at her wedding. The voice message left me frozen in place, her words slicing through my heart like a knife. "Mom, we think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. It'll be better for everyone, okay?" After decades of sacrifice, of cleaning houses and saving every penny, the $120,000 I'd transferred for her dream wedding suddenly felt like the price of my own humiliation. What she didn't know was that I still held the venue contract in my name, that the key to the property was mine to claim. As I sat there staring at my phone, something inside me hardened. My finger hovered over the banking app, ready to take back everything I'd given. But this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about uncovering the truth behind my daughter's sudden coldness and the shadow of my former sister-in-law, who seemed to be pulling all the strings. Follow this channel to discover what happened when I made one decision that changed everything, leaving 67 missed calls on my phone the next morning. Like and comment where you're watching from. I read every comment and would love to hear if you've ever had to stand up for yourself when it mattered most. I was sitting on my old living room sofa, feet resting on the crocheted blanket I'd made for my granddaughter when she was born. My tea had already gone cold. Everything was quiet until my phone vibrated. It was from my daughter, Emily. Just seeing her name still makes my heart beat differently. I touched the screen. It wasn't a call. It was a voice message. Her voice was calm, hard, rehearsed. "Mom, look, we've talked about it here, and we think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. It'll be better for everyone, okay?" After that, only silence. I felt the floor disappear beneath me. My mouth went dry. My breath got stuck in the middle of my chest. I looked around, not understanding. I thought it was a cruel joke, a prank, some kind of misunderstanding. But it wasn't. My daughter was uninviting me from the most important day of her life. Me, who raised this girl alone, with soap-covered hands and a heart full of doubts, being discarded like a burden. I didn't ask why. I didn't beg. I just looked at the reception contract on the table. The groom's name and my daughter's were there. But the person who had transferred the $120,000 was me. Nobody knew. It was money from a lifetime of savings. Penny by penny, cleaning houses, washing clothes for people who called me ma'am with that tone. And still, I was off the list. That night I sat in my kitchen and stared at the old photos on the refrigerator. Emily at 5, missing her front teeth. At 12, with her science fair ribbon. At 16, before prom in that dress that cost me 3 extra cleaning jobs. I wondered when exactly I became someone to be ashamed of. Was it the way I pronounced certain words? My hands cracked from years of cleaning products? The fact that I never finished college? The phone rang again. I thought maybe she'd changed her mind, that she'd realized what she'd done. But it was Rachel, my former sister-in-law. Her text message was short. "Sorry you won't be joining us. Emily will have the elegant wedding she deserves." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Rachel had always looked down on me, always thought her brother had married beneath him. After he died, she stayed in Emily's life as the sophisticated aunt who took her shopping and introduced her to the right people. Now I understood. This wasn't just Emily's decision. This was orchestrated. I opened my banking app and stared at the screen. The $120,000 transfer to the wedding venue showed as completed. Money I'd saved for 25 years. Money for my retirement. For the small house I dreamed of buying. All given to a daughter who now decided I wasn't good enough to sit among her guests. My finger hovered over the transfer back button. Part of me wanted to take it all back, to let them scramble to pay for their fancy string quartet and champagne towers. But another part, the mother part, couldn't bear to ruin her day, even if she had broken my heart. I clicked on Emily's voice message again and listened one more time. There was something in her voice, a slight tremor, pressure, something that didn't sound like my daughter. Or maybe that was just a mother's desperate hope, clinging to any explanation other than the simplest one. My own child was ashamed of me. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. Across the way, Mrs. Patel was watering her roses. She waved when she saw me, and I waved back. A simple gesture between neighbors who'd watched each other age for 20 years. What would she think if she knew? What would anyone think of a mother uninvited from her only daughter's wedding? The phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Mrs. Coleman, this is Javier from Valley View Estate. We need to confirm the seating arrangement changes requested today. I didn't respond. Seating arrangement changes? Of course. They were already erasing any trace of me. What they didn't know was that I still held power they weren't aware of. Not just the money, but something else. Something that would make them all think twice about treating a woman like me, a woman who had sacrificed everything, as if she were nothing. I picked up my phone and made a decision that would change everything. That night, sleep was a stranger to me. The digital clock on my nightstand mercilessly ticked away. 1 a.m., 2:15 a.m., 3:47 a.m., as I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of memories. Outside, the occasional car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating the walls with dancing shadows before disappearing again, leaving me in darkness that matched my thoughts. I found myself reaching for the framed photo I keep by my bed. Emily at her high school graduation. Her smile was so bright that day, like sunshine breaking through clouds. I remember how she'd looked out at the audience, searching for me, and how her face had lit up when our eyes met. I was in the back row, having rushed from Mrs. Henderson's house after finishing cleaning, still wearing my work clothes. But Emily had waved at me like I was royalty. When did that change? When did I become someone to hide away? I remembered the day Emily fell off her bike when she was 7. Her knee was scraped raw, and I carried her in my arms for 5 blocks to the urgent care, whispering stories the whole way to distract her from the pain. The doctor had called me a hero. Emily had looked up at me with those big hazel eyes, her father's eyes, and said, "My mommy is the strongest in the world." Now those same eyes couldn't bear to look at me on her wedding day, or the winter when she was 16 and she cried because the prom dress she wanted was too expensive. I still remember her face when she described it. A blue satin thing with little crystals on the bodice. $399.99, Mom. It's crazy, I know, she'd said, wiping tears with the back of her hand. What she didn't know was that I sold my wedding ring the next day, the last thing I had from her father, to buy that dress. The way she twirled in front of the mirror made it worth every penny. When exactly did I become disposable? At 4:30 a.m., I finally made a decision. My hands were steady as I picked up my tablet, opened the banking app, and entered my password. It took less than 15 seconds to transfer the $120,000 back into my account. The glamorous reception with hanging candles, string quartets, and champagne fountains was being financed by me, but nobody there knew. Apparently, even my name had been removed from the ceremony program, as if I'd never existed. But something caught my attention. A notification from the event company said, "Change in seating arrangements. 1 less chair." The pain turned into a quiet anger inside me. But little did I know that this humiliation had been carefully orchestrated. When the sun finally rose, I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the kitchen window. The neighborhood was coming alive. Mr. Peterson walking his golden retriever, the Wilkinson kids waiting for the school bus, Sarah from next door retrieving her morning paper. Normal lives going on around me, while mine had shattered like dropped glass. My phone dinged with an email notification from Valley View Estate. Final confirmation of event details required. I opened it to find the seating chart attached. There it was in black and white. My name had been removed from the family table. In fact, my name wasn't anywhere on the chart. But Rachel's was there, seated prominently at the main table, in what should have been my place. Rachel, my late husband's sister, who'd always looked at me like I was something she'd found stuck to the bottom of her designer shoes. Next to Rachel's name was a small note. Mother figure, toast hash 2. My hands began to shake so badly that coffee sloshed over the rim of my mug onto the floor. Mother figure? She was giving the second toast? The traditional mother of the bride toast? I sat down hard on a kitchen chair. The air knocked from my lungs as if I'd been physically struck. It wasn't just that I wasn't welcome. They were replacing me, erasing me, creating a new narrative where Rachel, sophisticated, college-educated Rachel with her perfect hair, and country club membership was the maternal presence in Emily's life. The doorbell rang, startling me. I wiped my eyes and opened the door to find a delivery man holding a large white box with a silver ribbon. "Delivery for Helen Coleman," he said cheerfully, oblivious to my red eyes. Inside was a pale blue dress with a note. "Something to wear when you watch the live stream, since you won't be joining us in person. R." I stood there holding the expensive fabric, feeling its cool silk against my skin. This wasn't just exclusion. This was cruelty dressed up as thoughtfulness. This was Rachel making sure I knew exactly who had won. But what Rachel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had something more valuable than money or social standing. I had the truth, and soon they would all be forced to face it. The blue dress from Rachel lay crumpled in the corner of my bedroom where I'd thrown it. Every time I glanced at it, my stomach tightened like I'd swallowed a stone. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, scrubbing the bathroom tiles until my knuckles were raw, polishing the silverware my mother had left me until I could see my tired reflection in each spoon. But the hurt followed me from room to room like a persistent shadow. Just as I was putting away the last of the dishes, my phone chimed. A text message from Rachel. "Hope you understood your place. Emily's wedding will be beautiful, even without your presence." The words burned on the screen. I stared at them, my hands trembling slightly. I didn't respond, but something felt deeply wrong. Why would Rachel speak as if she had influence over my daughter's wedding? The pieces started falling into place in my mind, like a terrible puzzle. Rachel owned Eternal Moments, that upscale bridal boutique downtown, where mannequins wore dresses that cost more than my car. She had always been close to Emily, especially after my husband, her brother, passed away. I used to think it was a good thing, that Emily needed family connections. Now I wasn't so sure. I walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out an old photo album. The spine cracked from years of opening and closing. In the back was a photo I rarely looked at, my wedding day. There we were, Jack and I, young and hopeful. And there, in the background, was Rachel, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she watched her brother marry the cleaning lady's daughter. Rachel had never forgiven me for something that happened years ago, a family secret involving my late husband that had divided the family. The night Jack told his family we were getting married, Rachel had pulled me aside during the celebration dinner. "He'll get tired of you," she'd whispered, champagne sweet on her breath. "You'll never really be one of us." But what she was doing now went beyond old resentments. This was calculated cruelty. And my daughter, my Emily, was perhaps being manipulated in ways she didn't even realize. I picked up my phone and scrolled through recent photos of Emily. There she was at her bridal shower, an event I'd been told was just for the younger girls. Rachel stood next to her in every picture, hand possessively on Emily's shoulder, wearing that signature smile that never warmed her eyes. In one photo, Rachel was adjusting Emily's hair, leaning in to whisper something. Emily's expression was strange, almost vacant, like she was somewhere else entirely. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so busy working, trying to provide, that I hadn't seen the web being spun around my daughter? I went to my computer and searched for Eternal Moments Bridal, Rachel's store. The website showed a glamorous boutique with crystal chandeliers and plush white couches. And there, featured prominently on the homepage, was Emily in her wedding dress, captioned, "Our beautiful bride-to-be," with boutique owner and proud aunt, Rachel Sullivan. The photo had been taken 2 weeks ago, according to the date. 2 weeks ago, when Emily had told me she was busy with work stuff and couldn't make our usual Sunday lunch. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Coleman, this is Marcus from Valley View Estate. I'm calling about the payment reversal for your daughter's wedding reception." I took a deep breath. "Yes, I authorized that reversal." There was an awkward pause. "I see. Well, we've been contacted by Miss Sullivan, who says there's been some confusion. She's attempting to submit payment now, but there seems to be an issue with the contract. Your name is still listed as the responsible party." Of course it was. I had signed the contract. I had put down the deposit. I was still legally the one holding the reservation. "There's no confusion, Marcus. I paid originally, and I've now reversed the payment. I understand, it's just that, Miss, Sullivan is quite insistent that the event proceed as planned. She mentioned that you wouldn't be attending. The way he said it, hesitant, uncomfortable, made my chest ache. How many people had been told I wasn't welcome at my own daughter's wedding? How widely had my humiliation been broadcast? Marcus, I said quietly, I'd like you to do something for me. Don't tell Miss Sullivan or anyone else that we spoke. Let's just say the payment issue is pending. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room. The streetlights came on outside, casting long shadows across my floor. My mind kept returning to that strange, vacant look in Emily's eyes in the photo with Rachel. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't quite place it. Then it hit me. It was the same expression she'd had as a teenager, when she briefly fell in with a controlling group of friends. Girls who told her what to wear, how to speak, who to talk to. I'd watched my confident daughter disappear before my eyes, becoming a shadow of herself. I'd stepped in then. I would step in now. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. Rachel wasn't just trying to take my place at the wedding. This felt like something deeper, more sinister, something that had been building for years, waiting for the perfect moment. And I had a sinking feeling that my daughter was caught in the middle of a revenge plot that had very little to do with her happiness and everything to do with an old wound that had never healed. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at the Willows, a fancy restaurant downtown, where they charge you extra if you want a lemon slice in your water. I wasn't invited, of course. The thought of all those people, my daughter's future in-laws, old family friends, Rachel and her social circle, gathered around tables, clinking glasses, while I sat alone in my small house, made my chest ache with a pain that felt physical. I busied myself with laundry, folding each piece with mechanical precision, trying not to think about Emily practicing her walk down the aisle without me there to fix her veil or squeeze her hand. The soft hum of the dryer provided a soundtrack to my loneliness. When my phone rang, I nearly jumped out of my skin. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Coleman, this is Lucia from Wildflower Arrangements." The voice on the other end was quiet, almost whispering. My mind raced to place the name. Wildflower Arrangements. Then it clicked. They were doing the flowers for Emily's wedding. Lucia was the owner's daughter, a simple, hard-working girl who'd grown up in my neighborhood. Our paths had crossed many times at the local farmer's market, where she sold bouquets from their family greenhouse. "Lucia, is everything all right?" There was a pause, the sound of a door closing in the background. "Mrs. Coleman, I'm sorry to intrude, but I felt I should call you. Something doesn't seem right." My heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" "I was at the venue today, setting up the sample arrangements for tomorrow's rehearsal, and I overheard something." Her voice dropped even lower. "They've removed you from the main table. And Rachel, she said something about you being a visual embarrassment." The words hit me like a physical blow. A visual embarrassment. Was that how they saw me? How my own daughter saw me? "There's more," Lucia continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Rachel was giving instructions to the photographer about family photos. She specifically said, 'We won't need any contingency for Helen. She won't be in the pictures.'" I sank down onto the edge of my bed, clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, my vision blurred with unshed tears. "Mrs. Coleman, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed to whisper. "Thank you for telling me, Lucia. It didn't seem right. After all you've done for Emily. My mother still talks about how you helped us when Dad was sick, bringing those casseroles every week and covering my brother's lunch money at school when things were tight. You're a good person. You don't deserve this." I couldn't speak. My throat felt as if it were closing up. "There's one more thing," Lucia said hesitantly. "Emily." She seemed off. When Rachel was talking about the photos, Emily just stood there nodding. But her eyes, I don't know how to explain it. It was like she wasn't really there. After thanking Lucia again, I hung up and sat in the gathering darkness of my bedroom. My mind wasn't on the humiliation anymore. That pain had moved to a deeper, more distant place within me. What consumed me now was worry for Emily. What had happened to my strong-willed, kind-hearted daughter? The girl who had once stood up to bullies in middle school, who had volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend through high school because she couldn't bear to see any creature neglected or mistreated. I remembered when Emily was 16, and a group of popular girls had tried to make her drop her childhood friend Tammy because they thought Tammy's thrift store clothes weren't cool enough. Emily had stood her ground, telling them, "If you can't accept my friends, you can't be my friend." She had come home that day and told me the story with fierce pride, and I had been so proud of her moral compass. What had changed? Or rather, who had changed her? I opened my laptop and went to Emily's social media page. For the past few months, almost every photo featured Rachel at brunch, at shopping trips, at wine tastings. In each image, Rachel was perfectly styled, not a hair out of place, while Emily looked increasingly washed out beside her, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. And then I saw it, a photo from 3 weeks ago. The rehearsal dinner invitation was visible on a table, and I could just make out the wording, "Join Emily and Jason," along with hosts Richard and Susan Mitchell and Rachel Sullivan. Rachel was listed as a host, not me, the mother of the bride, but Rachel. My stomach twisted with a sickening realization. This wasn't just about the wedding day. This was a systematic erasure of my role in Emily's life. My phone pinged with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo. With shaking fingers, I opened the app to see a picture from the rehearsal dinner. There was Emily, looking beautiful but somehow diminished, standing between Rachel and Jason, her fiancé. Rachel had her arm around Emily's waist. Her red-tipped fingers splayed possessively against my daughter's side. The caption read, "Final preparations for the most elegant wedding of the season. #proud aunt #like mother like daughter. Like mother like daughter." The words seemed to burn through the screen into my eyes. I wasn't a vindictive person by nature. Life had taught me to work hard, keep my head down, and treat others with kindness. But seeing that photo, those words, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my daughter, who seemed trapped in some kind of emotional web spun by a woman who had never forgiven me for the past. I had been patient. I had been understanding. I had been willing to step aside if that's what would make Emily happy. But now I wondered, was Emily truly happy? Or was she being manipulated by a woman who saw her not as a beloved niece, but as a pawn in a decades-long game of revenge? There was only one way to find out, and it would require me to do something I'd avoided for 25 years. Confront the past that Rachel and I both knew, but had never spoken of aloud. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. I sat at the table, phone in hand, heart pounding as I dialed the number for Valley View Estate. After 3 rings, a young man answered. "Valley View Estate, this is Tyler speaking. How may I assist you today?" I cleared my throat. "Hello, this is Helen Coleman. I'm calling about my daughter Emily's wedding reception this Saturday." "Oh, Mrs. Coleman." His voice brightened with recognition. "Good thing you called. Rachel mentioned you were out of the picture and that the contract name would be changing. But since you haven't signed the transfer paperwork, everything's still in your name. We were actually wondering if we should cancel the whole thing." I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips. The contract, of course. Any changes would require my signature. They thought they could erase me with words and seating arrangements, but legally, I was still the thread holding this entire event together. "I see," I said carefully, setting down my mug. "And the venue key? Has that been picked up yet?" I remembered the ornate brass key that came with the contract, a special touch from Valley View, a historic property that still used old-fashioned locks for their private entrance gardens. "No, ma'am. That's actually another issue. The key card can only be issued to the person named in the contract, which is you." Rachel seemed quite upset about that when I explained it yesterday. I bet she was. Rachel Sullivan, accustomed to getting her way with a flash of her platinum credit card, stymied by something as simple as a signature line on a contract. "I understand," I said. I'll be coming by later today to pick up the key. After hanging up, I sat in silence, turning this new information over in my mind. The main entrance key was still mine to claim. The contract was still in my name. Despite all their efforts to push me out, I still held power they hadn't accounted for. My phone rang again. It was Lucia from the florist's shop. "Mrs. Coleman," she whispered, as if afraid of being overheard. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but people are saying you're going to show up in the middle of the ceremony to cause a scene. Rachel told everyone she's arranged for security at the gate to stop you." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Security? To keep the mother of the bride out?" "It's awful," Lucia agreed. "But Mrs. Coleman, there's something else. Emily doesn't look right. During the rehearsal, she seemed, I don't know how to explain it, almost like she's sleepwalking. And when someone mentioned your name, Rachel cut them off immediately. The whole thing feels wrong." After thanking Lucia, I hung up and walked to my bedroom closet. From the back, I pulled out a dusty shoebox I hadn't opened in years. Inside were mementos from my marriage to Jack, photos, letters, and at the bottom, a small velvet pouch. I emptied it into my palm, a delicate gold locket with a tiny diamond chip in the center. Jack had given it to me on our first anniversary, just months before his accident. Inside was a faded photo of us, young and smiling, with baby Emily cradled between us. On the back of the locket, 3 words were engraved. "Truth conquers all." The truth. That's what Rachel had been running from all these years. That's what she was trying to bury by inserting herself into Emily's life, by pushing me out. The truth about her brother, about our family, about what really happened all those years ago. I clasped the locket around my neck, feeling its unfamiliar weight against my collarbone. Then I changed into my best blouse, a deep blue one Emily had given me for Christmas 2 years ago, and drove to Valley View Estate. The property was even more beautiful than the pictures online had suggested. Sprawling gardens surrounded a grand stone mansion with flowering trellises and a view of the distant mountains. As I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted Rachel's silver Mercedes parked near the entrance. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't planned on confronting her today. Too late to turn back now. I squared my shoulders and walked into the main office. The young man at the desk, Tyler presumably, looked up with a smile that faltered slightly when he saw me. "Mrs. Coleman." "Yes," I said, summoning every ounce of dignity I possessed. "I'm here to pick up the venue key and review the final arrangements." Before Tyler could respond, a side door opened and Rachel emerged, dressed in a cream designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She stopped short when she saw me, her perfectly made-up face freezing in momentary shock before settling into a cool smile. "Helen, what a surprise. I thought you understood you weren't needed here." Tyler looked uncomfortably between us, clearly sensing the tension. "The contract is in my name, Rachel," I said quietly, "as is the payment that was made." "Was made," she repeated, emphasizing the past tense. "I've already arranged alternative payment. Your presence isn't necessary." Tyler cleared his throat. "Actually, Miss Sullivan, as I explained yesterday, any contract changes require Mrs. Coleman's signature, and the venue key can only be issued to her." Rachel's smile tightened at the corners. "Fine. Helen can sign the transfer papers now, and we can all move on." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not signing anything, Rachel, and I will be taking the key." Her eyes narrowed, that perfect mask slipping just slightly. "You wouldn't dare ruin Emily's wedding. After all, she made it quite clear she doesn't want you there." The words were meant to wound, and they did. But I stood my ground. "This isn't about the wedding anymore, Rachel. This is about what you've been doing to my daughter, what you've been telling her, how you've been manipulating her." "Manipulating?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "Emily came to me. She's the one who said she couldn't bear to have you embarrass her on her special day. Those tacky clothes, that working-class accent. Did you really think you'd fit in with the Mitchells? They're one of the oldest families in Connecticut." Each word was a carefully placed knife, aimed at old insecurities I'd carried my entire life. But for the first time, I saw Rachel clearly, a bitter, angry woman still fighting a battle from decades ago, using my daughter as her weapon. "Tyler," I said, not taking my eyes off Rachel, "I'd like the key now, please, and a copy of the final guest list and seating arrangement. As Tyler fumbled with the desk drawer, Rachel stepped closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "You think you've won something here. Emily doesn't want you. She never did. She's been complaining about you for years. Your embarrassing job, your cheap house, how you never fit in with her college friends. I just gave her permission to say what she's always felt." I felt the words like physical blows, but I remembered Emily's vacant expression in those photos, so unlike my vibrant daughter. "I don't believe you," I said simply, "and soon neither will she." Tyler handed me the ornate brass key and a folder of documents. I thanked him and turned to leave, feeling Rachel's glare burning into my back. "You'll regret this, Helen," she called after me. "You're only going to humiliate yourself further." I paused at the door and looked back at her. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll be doing it as myself, not as someone living a lie." As I walked to my car, clutching the key and documents, I felt strangely calm. The venue was secure. The contract was still mine. And most importantly, I now understood exactly what I was fighting against. Not just Rachel's bitterness, but the poison she'd been whispering into my daughter's ear for years. Now I just needed to decide what to do with this knowledge, and with the power I still held over an event that was supposed to exclude me. The evening before the wedding, I sat alone in my living room. Outside, the sky had darkened to a deep indigo, stars beginning to peek through like distant diamonds. I'd placed the brass key from Valley View Estate on my coffee table, where it caught the soft lamplight and gleamed accusingly at me. Beside it lay my phone, silent and dark. I hadn't heard from Emily since that voice message 3 days ago, the one that had shattered my world in 15 cold seconds. The house felt emptier than usual tonight. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway, a yard sale find I'd painstakingly restored years ago, seemed to echo through the rooms. I'd cleaned obsessively all day, a habit I fell into when anxiety threatened to overwhelm me. The floors gleamed, the windows sparkled. Every surface had been dusted and polished to perfection, but the activity hadn't quieted my mind. I picked up the guest list I'd gotten from Valley View, 236 names. Cousins Emily hadn't seen in years, business associates of her future father-in-law, friends from college I'd never met, and Rachel's name, highlighted as a special family speaker. My name was nowhere to be found. At precisely 9 p.m., my phone lit up. An incoming call from Emily. My heart lurched painfully in my chest as I stared at her name on the screen. For 3 rings, I sat frozen, torn between desperate hope and bitter hurt. On the 4th ring, I answered, "Hello?" But it wasn't Emily's voice that responded. It was Jason, her fiancé. "Mrs. Coleman, it's Jason." His voice sounded strained, almost panicked. "Have you seen the venue contract? The Valley View people are saying there's an issue with the payment." Of course. They weren't calling to apologize. They weren't calling to include me. They were calling because they needed something. "Yes, Jason, I have the contract." There was a muffled conversation on his end. Then Emily's voice in the background. "Is she going to fix it? Not how is she? Not can I talk to my mom? Just is she going to fix it?" "Mrs. Coleman," Jason continued, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know what's happening with all this, but we really need that payment to go through. The venue says they can't proceed without it." I closed my eyes, feeling a strange calmness settle over me. "The payment was reversed because I was uninvited from the wedding, Jason. By my own daughter." More muffled conversation. I heard Rachel's voice now, sharp and commanding. "Look," Jason said, his tone hardening slightly. "Whatever issues you and Emily are having, this isn't the way to handle it. This is our wedding day. Our wedding day, not my daughter's wedding day. Our wedding day. A day I had no part in. I understand, Jason. Tell Emily I'll consider transferring the money again. But I need to think about it." I hung up before he could respond. Within minutes, my phone began to light up again. Call after call. Emily, Jason, numbers I didn't recognize. I watched the screen flash with silent notifications, feeling oddly detached from it all, as if I were watching someone else's drama unfold. By midnight, I'd received 23 calls. By 1 a.m., 42. Each one I let go to voicemail. Some left messages, frantic, angry pleas, about the money, about the contract, about the key. No one asked how I was feeling. No one acknowledged the hurt they'd caused. At 2:17 a.m., a text message from Rachel. "You pathetic, vindictive woman. Is this the only way you can feel important? By ruining your daughter's special day. Transfer the money now, or I swear I'll make sure Emily never speaks to you again." I didn't respond. Rachel's threat had no power anymore. Emily already wasn't speaking to me. By dawn, the missed call count had reached 67. The last one came at 5:46 a.m. from a number I hadn't seen in years, Michael Warren. The name made me pause. Michael owned Elegant Provisions, the catering company handling the wedding reception. He was also someone I'd known for a long time. We'd worked together at Sunny Hills Retirement Home when I was a night janitor, and he was a young chef just starting out. Before he became successful, before he catered to the wealthy families of Fairfield County, Michael and I had shared countless cups of coffee during late shifts, talking about our dreams and struggles. Unlike the others, I answered his call. "Helen." His deep voice was gentle, familiar. "It's been a long time." "Michael," I said, my own voice rough from a sleepless night. "Yes, it has." There was a pause, then, "I'm at the venue. Things are pretty chaotic here. Rachel is threatening to sue everyone in sight, and Emily—" He hesitated. "Helen, Emily doesn't look well. She seems, I don't know how to describe it. Lost, maybe." My heart constricted. "What do you mean?" "She's going through the motions, but her eyes are empty. When I mentioned your name, just to ask what was going on, Rachel jumped in and pulled her away. Something's not right here." I clutched the phone tighter. "Michael, have you ever seen Emily take pills? Medication of any kind?" Another pause. "Not directly. But yesterday, during the rehearsal dinner, Rachel gave her something. Said it was for wedding jitters. Emily's been kind of vacant ever since." A cold suspicion formed in my mind. Rachel had always been heavily medicated for anxiety designer pills, from expensive doctors who asked few questions. Had she been giving those same pills to Emily? Keeping her compliant, suggestible? "Helen," Michael said softly, "I can tell you one thing. Sometimes silence has more power than any speech. But I understand if you want to speak up. Just don't lose your peace trying to prove something." After we hung up, I sat watching the sun rise over the houses across the street. The brass key gleamed in the early morning light. The contract lay beside it. In my hand, I held my phone with its 67 missed calls. I thought about what Michael had said about silence having power. I thought about Emily's empty eyes in those photos. I thought about Rachel's decades-long grudge and the whispered poison she'd been feeding my daughter. Then I took a piece of paper and wrote a single sentence. I folded it carefully, placed it in an envelope, and wrote Emily's name on the front. I would place it in her mailbox on my way to Valley View Estate. The note read, "Tomorrow the door will be open. If you want to look me in the eyes, you know where to find me." It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't a surrender. It was simply a mother reminding her daughter that despite everything, she would always have a place to return to. I didn't attend the ceremony at St. Margaret's Church. Instead, I drove to Valley View Estate early that morning, the brass key heavy in my pocket, my heart heavier still in my chest. The sun was just beginning to cast long shadows across the immaculate grounds as I pulled into the empty parking lot. A few workers were setting up chairs on the grand lawn, arranging flowers along the aisle, where my daughter would walk with her new husband later that afternoon. Tyler, the young manager, looked surprised to see me. "Mrs. Coleman? The reception isn't until 4 o'clock. "I know," I said quietly. "I've come to give you this." But I handed him the brass key, watching confusion cross his face. "But don't you want to use it? You could enter through the private garden entrance. Avoid the main crowd if you're worried about confrontation." I shook my head. "No, Tyler. I want the event to proceed as planned. I'm not here to disrupt anything." I paused, looking at the elaborately decorated reception hall visible through the windows. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne fountains, all the trappings of the perfect wedding. Just promise me one thing. If my daughter asks about me, tell her I was here. Tell her I made sure everything would be perfect for her day. After leaving Valley View, I drove home and stood in front of my closet for a long time, finally selecting the blue dress I'd bought 2 years ago for Emily's college graduation. Not the expensive silk one Rachel had sent, that remained crumpled in the corner where I'd thrown it, but a simple, elegant dress in a shade that Emily once told me brought out the warmth in my eyes. I did my hair carefully, applied a touch of makeup, and fastened the gold locket around my neck. Then I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a check for $120,000, the full amount for the reception. On the memo line, I wrote simply, "With love, Mom." By 3 o'clock, I was back in my car, driving the familiar route to St. Margaret's Church. I parked across the street, watching as guests in fine clothes streamed into the grand old building. I recognized some faces, distant relatives, old family friends, Emily's childhood teachers. None of them saw me sitting there in my blue dress, a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. The ceremony would be starting soon. I could picture it all. Emily in her white dress, walking down the aisle on her father-in-law's arm instead of mine. Rachel seated in the front row, in the spot traditionally reserved for the mother of the bride. The priest asking who gives this woman in marriage, and someone else, anyone else, answering. I couldn't bear to watch it unfold. Instead, I drove to Valley View, arriving just as the first guests were beginning to gather for the reception. I slipped in quietly through a side door that Tyler had left unlocked for me, finding a shadowy corner near the back of the grand ballroom where I could observe without being immediately noticed. The room was stunning. Twinkling lights draped from the ceiling like stars, tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Everything Emily had dreamed of for her perfect day. Everything my $120,000 had paid for. Guests began to arrive, filling the room with chatter and laughter, and then a hush fell as the wedding party entered. First the bridesmaids and groomsmen, then the parents of the groom, and finally, Emily and Jason. My breath caught in my throat at the sight of my daughter, so beautiful in her lace gown, her face flushed with happiness. But as she scanned the room, I noticed something missing from her eyes, that spark of joy that had always been so quintessentially Emily. And then, walking directly behind them, came Rachel. She wore a champagne-colored dress that nearly matched the bridal party, her arm possessively linked with Emily's uncle on her father's side. She was playing the role of grieving sister of the bride's deceased father, but her eyes gleamed with triumph as she took her seat at the main table, in the chair that should have been mine. The festivities began. Dinner was served, toasts were made. I remained in my corner unnoticed, watching it all unfold like a play I had somehow been written out of. And then, as dessert was being served, Rachel stood and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. "As most of you know," she began, her voice carrying across the room, "I've had the privilege of being like a mother to Emily since my dear brother passed away. Today, seeing her so beautiful, so accomplished, I know Jack would be proud." Her voice caught on a well-practiced sob. "And while some people couldn't be bothered to be here today, I want Emily to know that she has always had the family she deserves." A murmur ran through the crowd. Confusion crossed some faces. Those who knew me, who knew how I had sacrificed everything for my daughter. Emily's expression remained fixed, almost blank, as if she were watching the scene from a great distance. And then, across the room, someone stood up. Jason, Emily's new husband. His face was flushed, his jaw tight with unexpected emotion. "Excuse me," he said, taking the microphone from Rachel's hand. Her perfectly composed face registered shock at the interruption. "Before we continue, there's something that needs to be said." He looked around the room, his eyes finding mine in my shadowy corner. A small nod of recognition. "This woman here," he said, pointing toward me, "is the reason we're all here today. And if anyone thought they could erase her presence, they should have the decency to walk out that door right now." The room went silent. All heads turned to follow Jason's gesture, eyes widening as they noticed me standing there in my blue dress, the gold locket glinting at my throat. Rachel's face drained of color. Emily stared at me, something flickering in her eyes. Confusion, recognition, the first stirrings of awareness. And then, to my surprise, Michael Warren stood up from his place near the kitchen doors. "Mrs. Coleman paid for this entire reception," he announced, his deep voice carrying across the stunned silence. "Every flower, every plate, every note of music. She did it because she loves her daughter, even when that love wasn't being returned." Rachel grabbed for the microphone. "This is inappropriate. This woman wasn't invited," but Jason cut her off. "Actually, she owns the contract for this venue. She could have canceled everything. Instead, she made sure her daughter had the perfect day." He turned to Emily, whose blank expression was beginning to crack, tears forming in her eyes. "Your mother never stopped loving you, Emily, even when you pushed her away." The room was so quiet you could hear the candles flickering on the tables. Rachel stood frozen, her perfect plan unraveling before her eyes. And then, to everyone's shock, she grabbed her purse and walked stiffly toward the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor in the silence. As she passed me, she hissed under her breath, "This isn't over." But it was. In that moment, as the truth came to light in a room full of witnesses, Rachel's power was broken, and my daughter, my Emily, was looking at me across the crowded room with clearing eyes, as if waking from a long and troubled dream. The reception hall hummed with hushed conversations after Rachel's dramatic exit. Guests exchanged bewildered glances, some looking embarrassed, others curious. The string quartet, sensing the tension, began to play again, something soft and gentle that filled the awkward silence. I remained in my corner, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. Emily stood frozen at the head table, her white dress gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. Her eyes, finally clear and present, were fixed on me. She looked like a porcelain doll that had suddenly come to life, emotions washing across her face in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, horror, shame. Slowly, she began moving toward me, weaving between tables. Guests parted to let her pass, watching with the same fascinated attention they might give to the climactic scene of a play. Her new husband, Jason, followed a few steps behind her, his face set with determination. When Emily reached me, we stood facing each other in silence. I could see the slight tremble of her lower lip, the way her hands twisted the delicate lace of her dress. Up close, I noticed the faint shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. How long had my daughter been disappearing before my eyes without me realizing it? "Mom," she whispered, the word catching in her throat. I don't understand what happened, what I did. It's like I've been in a fog for months." Tears spilled down her cheeks, smearing the perfect makeup that had undoubtedly been applied by some expensive artist Rachel had chosen. I reached up instinctively, wiping them away with my thumb, the way I had when she was a little girl, with skinned knees or hurt feelings. "Rachel," Emily continued, her voice shaking. "She kept telling me things about you, about how you'd embarrass me in front of Jason's family, how you weren't good enough for the kind of life I was stepping into." Her voice broke on the last words. "And she gave me these pills for anxiety," she said, "but they made everything foggy, made it easy to just go along with whatever she wanted." Behind her, Jason placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "I should have noticed sooner," he said, his voice tight with regret. "She changed so gradually, became so dependent on Rachel's approval. I thought it was just wedding stress. The pieces were falling into place. Rachel's manipulation, the anxiety medication, the slow erosion of my daughter's will and identity. It wasn't just about excluding me, it was about replacing me, about rewriting our family story with herself at the center." Emily was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking. "I said terrible things to you. I let them erase you from my wedding, my own mother. How could I do that? How could I be so cruel?" Part of me wanted to gather her in my arms, to tell her it was all right, that none of it mattered now. But the truth was, it did matter. The hurt was real. The betrayal had happened, regardless of the circumstances that led to it. "I don't know, Emily," I said quietly. I don't know how we got here, but I do know that I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. She reached for me then, collapsing against me in a rustle of white satin and lace, her tears soaking into the shoulder of my blue dress. I held her, feeling the familiar weight of her in my arms. My daughter, my only child, returning to me across a gulf I'd feared was unbridgeable. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. So sorry. The room around us had grown quiet again. 200 pairs of eyes watching this raw, painful reconciliation. But in that moment, they might as well have been invisible. There was only Emily and me, finding our way back to each other through the wreckage of Rachel's jealousy and manipulation. When Emily's tears subsided, she pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. "Stay," she pleaded. "Stay for the rest of the reception. Take your rightful place at the table. Dance with me for the mother-daughter dance, please." I looked at her tear-stained face, so beautiful and so broken. I thought about what it would mean to step into the spotlight now, to claim the role that had been denied me. There would be explanations needed, awkward conversations, pitying looks. The damage Rachel had done wouldn't be undone in a single evening. "Emily," I said gently, "this is your wedding day. It should be filled with joy, not drama and explanations." I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope containing the check. "This is my gift to you and Jason. Use it however you wish, but know that it comes with no strings, no expectations." She looked at the check, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "Mom, I can't take this. Not after everything." "You can," I interrupted, "because that's what mothers do. We give without expecting anything in return." I handed the envelope to the wedding coordinator, who had appeared anxiously at Emily's side. Then I turned back to my daughter. "I won't stay for the dancing, that moment has passed. But I want you to know that I've been here all along, watching over you, making sure your day was perfect. Just like I've always done, whether you could see me or not." Emily shook her head, distress clear on her face. "But I want you here. I need you here." I cupped her cheek in my hand. "What you need is to enjoy your wedding day, to dance with your husband, to celebrate with your friends. Tomorrow we'll talk. We'll begin to rebuild what was broken. But tonight is for new beginnings, not for fixing old wounds." Jason stepped forward then, his face solemn. "Mrs. Coleman, I want to apologize too. I should have realized what was happening. I should have protected Emily from Rachel's influence. I looked at this young man who had stood up for me when no one else would. You did protect her, Jason, when it mattered most. Take care of my daughter, and maybe bring her by for Sunday dinner next week." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "We'll be there." I embraced Emily one last time, breathing in the scent of her perfume, feeling the softness of her hair against my cheek. "I love you," I whispered. "Never forget that." Then with dignity intact, I walked toward the exit. As I passed the string quartet, I nodded to them, and they smoothly transitioned into the traditional father-daughter dance melody. Behind me, I heard the wedding coordinator announcing the first dance for the bride and groom. Outside in the cool evening air, I took a deep breath. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I could hear the music and laughter spilling out from the reception hall. My daughter was in there, dancing with her new husband, beginning her new life. And I had played my part in making it possible, even if from the shadows. Today, when I remember that day, I do so without bitterness, because I learned that sometimes the greatest love is the one that chooses not to be seen, but never stops existing, like a foundation buried beneath a beautiful building, invisible but essential, supporting everything without demanding recognition. And in the end, that's what motherhood has always been about. Sometimes love means standing your ground with dignity rather than giving in to bitterness. When my daughter finally emerged from Rachel's manipulation, I could have demanded the spotlight, could have made the moment about my vindication. Instead, I chose to give her one final gift, a perfect wedding day free from drama, even if it meant watching from the shadows. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed for that dance? Claimed that seat at the head table that was rightfully yours? The hardest part of being a mother isn't the sleepless nights when they're infants, or the teenage rebellions. It's knowing when to step forward and when to step back. Rachel's poisonous influence nearly destroyed my relationship with Emily. But in the end, truth has a way of rising to the surface, like a letter sealed in a bottle that eventually finds its way to shore. Sometimes, the greatest power comes not from fighting back, but from standing firm in your truth and letting others find their way back to you. If this story touched your heart, please follow this channel for more real-life stories that remind us that family relationships are complex, painful, and beautiful all at once. Like and share if you believe in the quiet strength of a mother's love, the kind that supports without demanding recognition, that forgives without forgetting, that endures even when tested by betrayal. What difficult relationship in your life might need this kind of patient love?